Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. We have not one, but two races to recap this week. I think we'll just do our takeaways from the weekend as far as our three things, though, across the board to make it easy.
Make it easy.
Make it easy for us. Make it easy for you, the listener. A couple of races to recap in Iowa, the Hy-Vee IndyCar weekend at Iowa, plus news on Nashville, moving on the calendar and moving on the course. We knew the course part, but very exciting news with that. And more to dive into as well in the latest and greatest in IndyCar, all to come this week. But first off, hi, Justin.
Hello, Mr. Hatch. Wow, fresh off a doubleheader weekend, our only doubleheader of the calendar. And
for now,
there's some rumors that we'll get to, but it was a good weekend out at Iowa. I actually passed the track on Sunday coming back from Colorado. I was worried I was going to get into traffic, but wasn't too bad. But a good weekend, a great weekend for Josef Newgarden.
Yeah, no surprise, right? We both picked him to win a race. Instead of winning a race, he wins both races, sweeps the weekend. It was no trouble for him. I mean, he was locked in. I think, and we start with our three things. Obviously, Josef Newgarden is the first and most important takeaway. He has made the championship relevant again. Now, can he catch Alex Palou down the stretch? I don't know. But at least he's given us a glimmer of hope that we could have a title fight come the end of the season.
Yeah. What was it going into the weekend?
117, I believe. 116, 117.
So despite Josef Newgarden winning both races, he only gained 37 points. I still have a hard time buying into this is all of a sudden an interesting championship. It's not, because Alex Palou is doing what he needed to do. He didn't have a race-winning car over the weekend, but he did exactly what he needed to do and get the best result he possibly could. Don't take too many chances and finish, and don't wreck.
He had his worst two results since the first two races of the year. 8th in St. Pete, 8th in Iowa race 1. 3rd at Texas, which was one of his worst results. I mean, he's finished outside the top 8 0 times. So he tied his worst result and then had a podium in race 2. That podium in race 2 made it, instead of being like a 63, 64 point gap, brought it back up to 80. So, I mean, Newgarden did all he could. He led the most laps. He won both races. But just, there's only so much you can do. And it's going to take an incredible tear down the stretch still to catch up.
And just think,
but I'm just waiting for one of these guys to blink, right? And we haven't really had that. Newgarden's had 3 finishes outside the top 10, but it's 12th, 15th, and 17th. No one's had a truly disastrous weekend like Scott Dixon had in Long Beach, where he was taken out by Pato Award, finished 27th.
Well, I think the key, too, is starting towards the front, especially on the road courses coming up, the road and street courses, is you cannot start in the midfield or back, because you're going to get caught up in something. And I think that's been a key both for Alex Palou and Josef Newgarden, is being able to start towards the front more often than not and avoid the chaos behind you. But all of a sudden, after the weekend, we only have 5 races left in the season. So there's not a lot of time for Josef Newgarden or whoever wants to try to catch Alex Palou to say, okay, well, I still have plenty of time. No, you don't. You have 5 races left. And the next one, the chaos at Nashville, which maybe could be, we said the weekend of Iowa was the most pivotal weekend. But now looking at the rest of the schedule, Nashville is the most pivotal weekend because of the chaos that can happen. So Josef Newgarden has a better shot than he did this time last week, but I'm not jumping on the, all of a sudden it's a championship fight.
No, I think it's at least close the gap. It's going to take a DNF from Alex Palou for this title fight to even
or Josef
really
Newgarden wins out or something like that.
Which is not going to happen.
You're at least taking a look. We continue to take a look at the point standings. If this was 130 points, we wouldn't. So at the very least, they're making us glance at the championship standings, but I'm not being intrigued yet in any way.
Well, and for Newgarden, I mean, he's got to improve his road and street course qualifying. He's been largely mid-pack at those events, which is
been lucky
surprising,
not to get caught up in anything.
But that's something he's got to improve moving forward. But obviously the first takeaway, Josef Newgarden dominates. This is his track. I mean, you look at the numbers for him at this track. This from Chad 200. How dominant he has been at Iowa Speedway over the years, and this guy dominated the lap sled coming in and then going out of it. Again, same deal. Like this is not a surprise. This is who he is. 6th Iowa victory, 1,847 laps led in the last 11 Iowa races. First weekend sweep by a driver since Graham Rahal in 2017 at Detroit. And it was on the broadcast. 5 straight oval wins for him, joins AJ and Al Sr. is the only 3 IndyCar drivers in history to do that. So it's pretty elite company as far as what he's doing right now, especially on the ovals.
It's been nothing short of very, very impressive.
What's your first takeaway?
Well, let's talk about Will Power, because he was impressive in qualifying, started on pole in both races, and yet he comes out of the weekend winless. And there's people love to say that, well, this guy doesn't all of a sudden didn't forget how to drive, or that guy. And I'm not saying Will Power's washed up, not by any means, but I will say that the Will Power of 3, 4, 5 years ago wins at least one race when he starts on pole in both races at Iowa. Now, it just so happened that his teammate Josef Newgarden was better, but in race 2, his teammate Scott McLaughlin was better than him, and Pato O'Ward and Marcus Ericsson for that matter. So when we talk about Will Power this season being winless, and what is it, 17 straight seasons, something like that, 16, something like that with a win.
Yeah, I think it's like 17.
I think we're seeing chinks in the armor of Will Power. As good of a driver as he is, and still is, the Will Power of 3, 4 years ago gets at least one dub, and he didn't. And I think that's telling to me, that says he's on the decline. And Scott Dixon, it's almost like it's sacrilege to say that Will Power or Scott Dixon are on the decline, but they're getting old. We all decline with age. I'm 40, and sometimes I feel like I'm 65 years old. You're still in your 30s, and you sometimes feel like that old.
Yeah.
And you lose cognitive ability and being as quick reacting as you are. It's not a knock on Will Power or Scott Dixon when we say their best years are behind them and they're declining. But I think it's realistic. I think it's fair to say. And I think with Will Power, as good as he is and good as he still showed over the weekend, he's not great Will Power anymore.
And, Dixon and Power both still winless on the year. And
correct.
We're getting to a point where it seems very plausible that one or even both of them don't win a race this year. Now, I would expect one of them to win a race this year, but I have doubts that both will.
There's only 5 races left.
Yeah,
and
they're running out of time.
And meanwhile, you're seeing younger guys. You're seeing, even look over the weekend, Josef Newgarden perform better. Scott McLaughlin, Pato O'Ward. You look at Marcus Ericsson as well. That's the new generation, right? The new crop of
let alone
IndyCar stars.
The younger guys, Christian Lundgaard getting his first win. Colton Herta hasn't won a race yet this season as well.
Kyle Kirkwood.
No one on McLaren's won a race, so
obviously Palou. We were not even talking about Alex Palou, right?
Palou could win again.
It's almost like people are afraid to say that Will Power and Scott Dixon are not as good as they used to be, but I think it's a fair assessment. And I think we saw another example of that over the weekend with Will Power, that sits on the pole, looked dominant with his pole runs, and couldn't win either race. And that doesn't happen 3-4 years ago. What's your number 2?
My number 2. It's time we talk about this. I feel like we've kind of danced around it, hinted at it throughout the season. McLaren, another winless weekend. Mm-hmm. You add a third car. You have to staff up for that third car. Taylor Kyle, removed from his position. He goes to Ganassi. I don't think we're talking enough about that move. I'm not saying that, he was end all be all as far as success and failure at McLaren, but that's a massive change when you have, an executive in the team move teams in the offseason. You bring in Gavin Ward, who obviously had a ton of success as Newgarden's engineer at Penske. He was to the top and kind of leading day-to-day operations of that team. I'm not saying he's doing a bad job. I'm just saying there's a shift in leadership, and you add a third car, which on one hand, yes, that's a third car of data, right? For all the practice sessions and qualifying and races and, another person in the driver's meetings to compare things to, but also it does stretch your team. And this is a team where we thought Indy 500 or bust this year, championship or bust this year, and the Indy 500, they went bust because Rosenqvist and Award crashed while having very capable race-winning cars. Alexander Rossi finished in fifth. I mean, he was just kind of there. He's been consistent, but we're not seeing the top-end speed from him. And then Pato Award did have a podium in race one, but said his car wasn't great. And then you really saw it on Sunday as far as his car. He finished in 10th and just, he was kind of at a loss for words in the post-race interview, saying this is one of the most difficult cars I've ever had to drive. So for this team, and Felix Rosenqvist had a chance, kind of faded back, unable to navigate lap traffic like Newgarden. That's why no one can catch him at Iowa, because he is dynamite in lap traffic compared to everyone else. But he did finish fourth, and Rossi just really struggled over the course of the weekend, 15th in race two. And then in race one, he was 10th. So all these changes, all this hype, we bought into it, right? We were believers. We thought they'd get one of two, between the Indy 500 and the championship, and potentially both. We thought
I didn't think the championship. I said
okay.
I still say the only two teams.
I thought there was a
championship.
possibility, but this team has taken a clear step back this year. Still yet to win a race. It's time we say this season's been a disappointment. There are 5 races left. Can they regroup? I mean, can you imagine at the start of the season if you would have told me, yeah, Ray Hall wins a race and we're at 5 races left and McLaren has not won a race this year? I would not believe you.
2 years ago, Pato Award won twice, finished third in the championship. He said, okay, here we go. He is going to be a consistent contender for a championship now, win multiple races. Felix Rosenqvist was a non-factor, 21st overall. Then you went to 2022.
Well, and he gets a bit of a pass because he missed
2 races.
Some time.
Yeah, he missed 2
with
races.
That injury.
But wasn't like overly impressive. He had maybe 2 top 10s that entire year. 2022, last year, 2 wins for Pato Award, Birmingham and Iowa 2. But finishes 7th in the championship. But Felix Rosenqvist finished 8th. He's feeling pretty good. 2 guys in the top 8. Okay? And take a next step. This year, no wins. Pato Award is 6th in the championship, a non-factor in the championship race. And your next close, Alexander Rossi's 10th and Felix Rosenqvist is 12th. Disappointing season. So each of the past 2 seasons, we felt, okay, Arrow McLaren is going to take the next step. Going into last year, we said Pato Award won twice, finished 3rd in the championship. Here he goes. Didn't live up to that. Finished 7th in the championship last year. Did win a couple races, though. Now, they don't even have a race win, and their best is 6th in the championship in Pato Award. I've said it. I will continue to say it. There's only 2 teams in this series that can win a championship. That's Penske and Ganassi. Now you look at it, and people want to keep talking about the big 3 and big 4, and that's what we do. We talk about the big 4 here on the podcast. But McLaren is not living up to that billing. That's for sure. 6th, 10th, 12th in the championship is not going to get it done. And all the talk about adding a 4th car, and I don't know how much of that is internal as much as people asking about it. If I'm McLaren, I'm saying, why the hell should we add a 4th car? We can't win races with 3 cars.
Correct. And I also think, like on the commercial side, right, they've been a massive success. But you got to win races.
Eventually that goes away.
Yes.
If you're not winning races and not competing for championships.
Yes. And I think that's where they're at. Now, obviously, if they move on from Felix Rosenqvist and add Alex Blow, there's going to be a lot of hype there. But again, if I'm Alex Blow, why leave?
It makes no sense to me. Well, it does because of money.
It's money.
It's money.
That's why.
I get it.
It's simple. It's money.
If you don't get, here's the problem with Alex Blow right now, is he's on the cusp of maybe getting a seat at AlphaTauri. Okay? In Formula One. Let's say he doesn't get it, and then he goes to McLaren, and he regresses with that team. That's his one opportunity in Formula One. That's it. If next year he finishes 5th in the championship or 6th and doesn't win a race or wins 1 race, his eye on Formula One, the shine on him is going to be less than it is right now. That's what I don't understand. Like, if you don't get to Formula One this offseason and the way McLaren is performing, that's probably your last best opportunity.
The one thing I'll say about 2024 that we haven't really talked a lot about, just simply because we're locked into this season, but the hybrid aspect of the engines, right? The hybrid units coming on board, that will change the playing field a bit. You got to remember, I mean, back in the day when they had new chassis every year and, competition between Goodyear and Firestone, like it was more open as far as teams that could win. But because of the spec nature of the series, you have one tire manufacturer, you have one chassis manufacturer.
And
nothing changing with the car. Most years, last couple of years, we've had nothing change.
Or at least no drastic changes.
It's given Penske and Ganassi a foothold. Now, with the hybrid unit coming back on, this could be a potential wrinkle and wild card as far as who adapts to that well and who doesn't.
I agree. It could be the great equalizer, at least in the short term for some teams. But for this year, McLaren has clearly underperformed, and people continue to try to hype up McLaren and Pato O'Ward and Alexander Rossi and Felix Rosenqvist. And I don't think any of those three are scary to compete for championships. And for this year, at least, they haven't won any races. They've been there at times, but haven't been able to close. Even Felix Rosenqvist on Sunday hasn't happened.
You got to close, right?
And there's only two teams in this series that can close consistently enough to win championships.
All right. Is it time for
my number two? Is that where we're at? My number two. Let's talk about. Let's keep up on the disappointment train. Go to Ray Hall.
This was expected, though, right?
It was expected, but at the same time, we're talking about drivers that get passes. And once again, Graham Rahal, by all indications, is driving a terrible car, crashes on, Saturday?
Yes, finished last.
We saw Josef Newgarden struggle in his first stint in race one. Knew exactly what to tell his team. They were able to make an adjustment, and he was unbeatable after that, both days. I understand that Rahal is not Penske, but at the same time, how many times is Rahal going to point to the car was terrible and that's why I was terrible, as opposed to, can you give relevant feedback, enough relevant feedback to make changes, to make a bad car better? I'm not saying race winner, but a bad car be able to bring it home 13th or whatever, or 13th place car, bring it into 8th.
Which you look back and it's like, he's able to do that on road and street courses.
Yeah, ovals is
surprisingly on like ovals where he's won at Fontana,
won at Texas.
Texas.
Did he win at Texas?
Yeah, he won at Texas.
Okay,
in 2016. Like that has not necessarily been the case.
Right.
I mean, he's got 2 oval wins. Obviously, one swept the weekend at Detroit in 2017. He won at Mid Ohio in 2015. And then won in St. Pete in his debut back in 2008.
I just feel when you look at it is everybody wants to say RLL is lost without putting blame on the drivers. When I look at Graham Rahal as being a problem on that team, he's not as good as he used to be. I don't think he was ever as good as people wanted him to be.
I mean, he's finishing like 7th in the points. So like that was like his peak. Now,
right.
2015 was the anomaly where he was a contender late in the season for the championship. I think he finished like 5th that year.
Right.
But that was the high point.
Right. And it's just declined since then. So when we look at how RLL moves forward, and we've said it on the podcast, Linus Lundqvist has to be, Christian Lundgaard has to be your number one driver.
Yes,
and he is the top driver on that team.
He should be.
I don't think he's treated like the top driver on that team. Now, some of it's nepotism, of course, with Bobby in control and Rahal name in the title, but I think there needs to be a cultural shift there and saying Lundgaard has to be our guy, and everybody else has to get behind it. And I just look at it, and he just wasn't able to adjust. And I think some of that is on him. A lot of it is on him, that team. I don't think Jack Harvey is very good in the car, and I don't know if Graham Rahal anymore is very good in the car, quite frankly.
Jack Harvey, 18th and 19th over the weekend, never a factor. Christian Lundgaard, 20th in race 1. He was 13th in race 2. But that was their best result across the board. Rahal started 6th in race 2, finished all the way back in 20th. I mean, you look at them in points. Lundgaard in 9th. Obviously, with that race win, he's had a fairly good year. He's getting better. Graham Rahal in 16th, and then Jack Harvey in 23rd. Now, when you factor in leader circle, I mean, that's very important.
Right.
Now, as far as the entrant, we know the 11 car for Ganassi isn't eligible, so Jack Harvey is on the cut line. As far as what we understand with the leader circle, they're super secret, not going to reveal that.
That's what Marshall Pruitt says. Like nobody can talk about it,
which is a shame because on the broadcast, this is a selling point when you have a blowout championship. And yet we can't even dive into the numbers. I don't know if it's supposed
to be a secret that they give out millions of dollars to teams. I don't understand why because it's a storyline.
It's absolutely a storyline.
With five races to go, it'd be a fascinating storyline to watch as the championship becomes more and more irrelevant. At least the championship race, in my opinion, there would be some excitement watching the back markers try to finish in the top 22 or 23, something like that. So, but nobody wants to talk about it apparently. For some reason. But what are we on? Year 3? Year third?
My third. And I think you might know where I'm going to go with this.
Hopefully you don't steal mine.
I probably am. Race control.
Dang it. You're going to find another one in.
I think you can tie in something with mine, though, to yours. So, once again, bizarre weekend. It started off when Kyle Kirkwood missed the Friday weigh-in.
Is that what happened? I knew he failed inspection. He just missed it.
Yeah, he missed the Friday weigh-in for drivers. I think that's after the practice.
Oh, okay.
I
was thinking Benjamin Peterson failed inspection.
Yes, that also happened.
Yes,
but so he missed the weigh-in, docked time in a session. Now this has apparently gone on throughout the season, and he lost basically his warm-up participation time.
He's
on
always
Sunday.
Late?
Apparently this has happened multiple times, was the understanding. Okay. So that was like the first thing. Then you throw in Jack Harvey getting that 9-place grid penalty for what happened in Toronto, which, I mean, they penalized Devlin DeFrancesco previously. I mean, you go back to what happened at Texas back in 2021 for his crash. Nathan Brown saying, context. His infraction came on an oval, served on a street course where engine penalties are 6 spots. And he got 6 spots. Devlin did back during his rookie year. Jack, his came on a street course, served on an oval, gets 9 spots. Okay. Like these are fair. I felt like, I mean, the Kirkwood thing is just kind of humorous.
Right.
The Jack Harvey thing felt like overkill, but on a track like Iowa, does it really matter that much? Right. It was for one race, not a big deal. Then you get into the really weird. You have 2 cars disqualified. And this was very surprising because this has hardly ever happened in the history of the sport, going back many, many years. As far as a stat goes, Russ Thompson, Calhoun 98 on Twitter said, I can only find 5 instances of a driver being disqualified in the history of IndyCar. At least I'm confident in the numbers back to 1936. Pretty rare. Never before 2-in-1 race. We had Benjamin Peterson disqualified. And then
being slow.
This was on Sunday. And then Stingray Robb as well disqualified for the wheel coming off and going on track. And we'll get to that as part of race control here in a minute. But so that was bizarre.
Well, Benjamin Peterson, it was speed.
Yes.
Or lack thereof. He was terrible all weekend, that whole team. That makes sense. If you're not, there's a rule. Mm-hmm. What is it? The 104%.
Well, they don't have that anymore, is my understanding. They used to, it was like 105 or 107. They used to have that.
With the close confines of Iowa, if you're just out there on a joyride and you don't have any speed,
if you're a second off, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, but I think he was multiple seconds off. Like, he probably shouldn't have been out there. I don't disagree with that. I disagree with the punishment to Stingray Robb,
which had nothing to do with him and everything to do with his team.
That's the thing. Is you're punishing him.
You
not
had
the team.
Delays by race control as far as throwing the yellow on that incident with the tire on track, and we're still green. Connor Daly narrowly avoided it. Josef Newgarden avoided it with a little bit more space, but not much. Yeah. And he was the race leader at the time. I mean, that was bad.
Can we disqualify race control for not throwing the yellow quicker?
Right?
Because that was nuts.
That was scary. You had the inconsistency on Sunday's race alone where you go yellow for Canapino, which literally felt like a competition caution. And then that cleanup took forever because you got to reorder the field.
You have to, and then brought the blowers out and everything, which I understand.
Sweep the track, which is good for competition, but it was like what a 16 lap caution.
It was 16 to 17 laps. Yeah, something around there.
for actually no 19 laps for Canapino in turn 2. Then you have Takuma Sato hit the wall, no caution, nothing. You just keep going,
which was almost the exact same contact as Canapino.
And then Ryan Hunter-Reay brushes the wall. You throw the caution, okay, that's fine. Then we get into we went from bizarre to weird to infuriating with that final stretch. So they went yellow lap 240. It was 7 laps total. You went green. You had a 4-lap shootout at the end. Okay, that's fine. But the rule that they cited was abandonment of procedures. So numerous people cited, before the race control said, if there's a yellow with 10 or less laps to go, we will not do pit stops. We will do this rule. And so people were confused, and that came out after the race, of course. So we don't get that info in real time. So it does make it a little bit tricky. I get that. Calling it abandonment of procedures is, as Marshall Pruitt pointed out on Racer.com, maybe not the best phrase to use to give fans confidence in what you're doing. But here's my thing. This goes back to the Indy 500. And I get it. People say, well, the Indy 500 is officiated differently, and that's fine. If that's fine, well, then why don't you have a more open rule book, too, for the Indy 500, I guess is my point. If you're going to officiate it differently, you should have, teams should be able to try more stuff. Go back to what it used to be, right? Why are you using the same rules as far as technical, but then you're officiating the race differently? That to me is a contradiction. I don't like it. I know a lot of people don't like it. In my book, you go red, you sweep the track, you allow pit stops under yellow, and you have a couple more laps of green. I mean, yes, they finished on their green. That's always the goal, and IndyCar's made that clear. Now they're not going to go to overtime, which is totally understandable. It's just like you have a green flag finish in both, but I can't understand, what they're going to call. You go back to VK hitting someone at Road America. Was it Rosenquist? I can't remember who it was. Whoever he had contact with.
Yeah.
Like that seemed like a no-brainer penalty. They didn't call it. On Sunday, not knowing the context of what they said in the driver's meeting, I thought, oh, this is an obvious red flag. You sweep the track. You run a couple laps under yellow and allow pit stops. You reorder the field. You restart. But it's just like we don't understand. Like everything we think they're going to do, they don't do, and everything we think they're not going to do, they do. So it's frustrating.
I don't have as much problem with not throwing the red there because you still had 4 laps of green. I think that's fine. I think that's enough. I do have problem with inconsistent penalties, whether you're calling them, not calling them. The disqualification of Stingray Robb. The biggest problem with that whole thing was the tire just rolling around and nobody throwing a caution. Like we could be sitting here talking about a fatal accident in the sense that we got lucky at Indy when they punted the tire and it didn't go into the crowd. You could have punted that tire and it did hit somebody. It could have went into the Hy-Vee suite. Could you imagine? I mean, seriously. It would have devastated the event, the track, and your relationship with Hy-Vee, not to mention fans. All because they didn't throw as soon as this kind of goes down a rabbit hole, but as soon as a car doesn't have all 4 of its tires, if it releases a car with a loose tire, no lug nut on, there's an official in every pit. Okay. They should radio yellow, yellow, yellow for that reason. And immediately the yellow flag comes out. It's not, okay, pull off to the side, or maybe he can make it around or whatever. The yellow is immediately thrown because more often than not, that tire is coming off at some point. And that's just miscommunication from IndyCar. That needs to be a prevalent thing. Say, hey, if a car leaves the pit and they don't have all 4 of their lugs on, then the caution is thrown for safety.
Like, do you add a sensor, right? Is that the
I don't know if you need a sensor. You just need the official standing there with 2 eyes and watching the pit stop. And if the team panics and realizes if there's a lug nut rolling away, then you know that the tire didn't get on. Or the team needs to tell the official immediately, didn't get that tire on, immediately the yellow's thrown. Like 9 seconds, that felt like forever. It felt like 30 seconds that tire was wandering around. And a couple of drivers barely missed the damn thing. And luckily with the aero screen, you're not as much concerned with the driver as you are spectators, where that tire is going to go. That's my bigger issue, is that breakdown, the unpredictability of who's getting a penalty, who's not. Now all of a sudden we have this disqualification thing that they're throwing out. And when's the last time you saw that with a loose tire? I haven't. So it's just a lot. I don't have as much problem with the red flag at the end and not throwing it. I understand why you do it in Indy because it's Indy.
I don't like that. You got rid of double points. Like either make it completely separate and open up the rule book beyond just.
No, I don't think you can do that. I don't think one thing means everything
they had a
else.
Separate rule book.
I know, but I don't think one calling it different means you have to change everything. I think this is the most eyes we have on the product the entire season, and we need to make sure we maximize the entertainment potential.
I just hope the drivers know that and understand it as far as the efficient, because it didn't feel like they knew it at the Indy 500 as far as the red flags and people upset after all that. So I want consistency, and I guess consistently inconsistent is the consistency we get with race control. It is what it is. What's your third?
I guess mine was the tire thing, because I think that was very, very dangerous. Because of what could have happened.
And it's also the second time this season we've had a tire issue where was so dangerous that IndyCar is so lucky that nothing happened.
One was, and usually the IndyCar is incredibly unlucky. For a long time, IndyCar, if it was what was Murphy's Law. If anything could go wrong, it went wrong with IndyCar. But they've been lucky this year. One was the failure of the housing and all that stuff with the tire. It wasn't the tire tether itself, but you dodged a bullet. This one was just blatant, didn't have a lug nut on it, rolled off, and could have been punted into the crowd. And IndyCar got lucky with both. They addressed the issue, the first issue at the 500, but they need to address the second one. And they need to change procedure to make sure that if any car leaves a pit without all four tires secured on with lug nuts, then the yellow is immediately thrown. And to your point, maybe it's a sensor. Maybe it's the official. Maybe it's the team immediately radioing in and saying, loose lug nut or loose tire, and they immediately throw the yellow. Like, eventually, this is going to burn IndyCar because it's not taking it seriously, apparently enough, that their solution is disqualifying the driver. That the problem wasn't that the tire came off. The problem was the yellow wasn't thrown forever for 9 10
it wasn't
seconds.
thrown for like 11 seconds.
It's like
horrifying.
Yes, and you have to police your drivers, because you say, well, you should immediately pull over. Well, apparently he did it in practice and got around on the warm up lane and was able to come back in. I think per Marshall Pruitt. I think Marshall Pruitt wrote an article about that. But you have to throw the yellow immediately, because if that tire goes into the crowd, it ruins Iowa forever. It ruins your relationship with Hy-Vee forever, guaranteed. It sets you back however many years with fans. Who's going to want to go to?
Oh my gosh!
You know what I mean?
I don't even want to think like if
this is not 1990. What was it? 1996, 97. What happened at
Atlanta or Charlotte? Yeah, and then you go back to Indy and what was it, 89 or 87? With the tire going in the crowd, like you can't. I can't
happen
imagine.
in 2023.
I can't even.
That cannot
imagine that
happen.
happening.
And you dodged in two incredible bullets. Credit for IndyCar for seemingly addressing and solving the first issue, but it seems like we're just glossing over what could have been a potentially devastating situation for the entire sport.
All right, that wraps up our three things. Other takeaways from Iowa. Team Penske, top 5 for all three drivers both days. Of course, they want to add more short ovals. Team Penske dominates those tracks. Great news on the TV ratings front. I mean, it helps when you have the Open Championship, or as people also know it as the British Open, as a lead-in both days. I get that it wasn't competitive.
Is there a lot of crossover between golf and auto racing, though?
No, but IndyCar's had other mega ratings. Really? I think way back, I'm trying to remember the year. If it was like back when they called it the British Open, but was a lead-in for IndyCar at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, did it really
years back, and IndyCar put up it was like a 1.5, like in, I don't remember the year, 2008, 2012. I mean, that's it. IndyCar couldn't dream of that rating outside the Indy 500 these days, but still really good ratings for IndyCar at Iowa. averaged 1.121 million viewers across the doubleheader weekend. That is the total audience delivery, which includes digital, including Peacock, up 31% from a year ago, which was 853,000. Race 1, 1.145 million, most watched Iowa race since 2008. Sunday's race, 1.092 million. So both races above a million. And for comparison, last year, race 1, 957,000, race 2, 743,000. I mean, this is a significant jump. That is some obvious positive traction.
It puts IndyCar, from all indications, back into the positive in terms of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest thing. Up is up, growth is growth. And it was a great weekend for IndyCar all around on track. I felt like the event was pretty solid for the second straight year, and ratings were very, very healthy.
Now, as far as tickets go, I mean, they added, what was it, like 50 suites?
They said they had those mostly sold out.
Yeah. And as far as the tickets, though, they said for race 1, Nathan Brown of the Indy Star had an article, sold like, 20,000 of 22,000 seats. Now, did it look that full? No. But if seats are sold, look, this is an event. It's hard to know because people are coming for the concerts.
So what was the first one? Carrie Underwood? Maybe 5,000 people came to see Carrie Underwood and left. I don't care. That was the big debate kind of on social media as people were pointing out, well, they're not coming for the racing. Who cares?
Yeah.
You bought tickets.
You're selling tickets. They expanded the suite capacity. Now, did they sell more of those suites? I don't know. But they clearly saw enough demand to expand it and add that one inside the track that was 3-4 stories, and that will be in Vegas for F1.
Yeah, it will be in Vegas. It was their first event with that thing was Iowa, kind of testing it out. So here's my thing: is there were plenty of people that went to the races for the races, but didn't stay for any of the concerts or didn't get there early. So what's the problem with people going to the event to just see an act? Maybe the people that wanted to see Ed Sheeran showed up an hour before he was supposed to play with 2/3 of the race gone. I don't care. They bought a ticket, didn't they? So what do I care?
Yeah. I mean, money's money, right?
Money's money, man. As long as
Hy-Vee's happy and IndyCar's happy,
I don't care. I don't care if 22,000 people buy tickets and only 5 people show up to watch the race. They bought tickets, didn't they?
I mean, there are up to 30,000 people in the snake pit. The Indianapolis 500 on race morning.
It's a great point that you brought
up. The
Indy
500.
Because that's the thing, is should we criticize the 30,000 people at the snake pit that couldn't care less that there's a race going on? No, because they bought tickets.
The money spends the same.
Absolutely.
So I find that interesting. Other notes, Colton Herta called for a repave. Yeah, I don't disagree. The average speed for, I think, Sunday's race is from Indy 44 on Twitter, 133.527. Now, you compare that to race 1 for IndyCar on Saturday, 143.155 for the series formerly known as Indy Lights, 144.126. So, look, I get it. The tires wear off in IndyCar compared to the Junior Series, and they're only doing 75 laps. But it was a very good race. If you haven't missed it, catch up on Peacock. You can check it out on there. But yes, the track does need to repave. I don't disagree.
But here's my pushback. There's multiple lanes to run on the track now. And this was a track that was dead to rights 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have the money right now to repave the damn thing.
No.
Without Hy-Vee.
Without adding like an Xfinity race.
Right. Without Hy-Vee, let's be honest. It's Hy-Vee is the crucial piece here. Without Hy-Vee, there's no event there. And Iowa Speedway is sitting empty like Chicagoland and Kentucky and all, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's not all of a sudden buy into the fact that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around to repave Iowa. Okay. It just kind of bothers me, that statement. Yeah. It's read the room a little bit. Colton Herta, there's not much money there. They're revitalizing not only this event, but the track itself. There's not money there to repave. And I think it races fine. You just need to figure out ways to beat Penske. Penske's not complaining about a repave, but we go to Texas. You're talking about, one lane, one groove.
Oh, they just repaved it though a couple years ago.
They repaved it, and look, it has multiple grooves, or at least IndyCar makes sure it has multiple grooves and running. But Iowa's fine.
There are people complaining about this, and I don't understand. Like the concerts, the track, whatever. Like I'm just happy IndyCar has a short oval race to go to in the Midwest. and potentially adding another. In fact, let's get to schedule stuff before we move on in the episode. So Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com had this article come out a couple days ago talking about the return to Iowa and where things stand as far as the future of IndyCar and on short ovals. Obviously, Iowa, I think that's going to happen moving forward as long as Hy-Vee's on board.
He said they're on board for next year.
Pruitt saying that the IMS road course race in August is going to be traded out for a return to the Milwaukee Mile.
Thank God.
As far as rumors go. Also, rumors suggest that Gateway, which ran as a doubleheader in 2020 during the COVID-shortened season, could also return to a double feature as well next year, which is very, very interesting.
Could they adopt in Iowa and try to get a couple musical acts? Maybe not 4 premier ones, but maybe a couple concerts after the races?
Perhaps. Obviously, Marshall advocating it, as we have, for a return to Richmond, which was going to be on that 2020 schedule pre-pandemic. So that's in on the schedule news. And then the big bombshell, Nathan Brown of the Indy Star reporting, officially, we've heard rumors, right? But officially saying that the Music City Grand Prix will be the 2024 IndyCar season finale on the streets of Nashville, yet to be unveiled course. The announcement expected August 3rd, ahead of IndyCar's visit to Nashville in the race weekend. They'll crown a champion on historic Lower Broadway, according to Brown's sources. This is huge. Season-ending banquet will also be in Nashville. Maybe they can get it at the Grand Ole Opry, right? I mean, that would be really, really cool. Or even Ryman Auditorium, which is right off Broadway, the Opry, which is outside of town, outside of downtown. But either way, the potential here is great. This expected to come through. Now, as far as what the street course will look like, expected to use several blocks of Broadway Street, which is the key thing. That includes downtown Nashville, Country Music Hall of Fame, Bridgestone Arena, and of course all the honky tonks and bars along there as well. Also Bridgestone Arena, just up the road on Broadway. Obviously Bridgestone, Firestone. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's their American headquarters. So that's a big deal. All this makes sense. I'll be curious what the track layout looks like. Brown says it's unclear where the bridge, which served as a major promotional focus as a racing oddity, will return in this newest layout.
Per one of the TV stations in Nashville, the Korean War Memorial Bridge or Veterans Memorial Bridge will be an aspect of the racetrack still, at least.
And that to me is key as far as making this an entertaining track.
Yes, I would concur. So, I think it's great for the end of the season for a higher profile event than in front of hardly anybody out at Laguna Seca. It just hits better. And I think, quite frankly, when you're schmoozing corporate sponsors, if they come to an event that's vibrant, that's exciting, that has a ton of people, I'm sorry, if you're a company that's interested in investing in IndyCar and you go to Laguna Seca and watch that race, you're probably falling asleep and you're looking around to a bunch of empty mounds and going, why the hell would I invest in this?
I think that's IndyCar saw it as a way to entertain sponsors because of the location, but the events, whether it was at Sonoma or now at Laguna Seca as the season finale, just felt like there was zero buzz. At least at Fontana, you had an oval race in the LA market for a couple years. Yeah,
but nobody was showing up.
It was so late, and they kept jerking around with the date there for Fontana. That ultimately killed that race. This will be the season finale. We don't know when, obviously. I would guess mid-September. Obviously, Nashville impacted by the Olympics next year on NBC, so that also helped with the date change, just because they're limited. They can't use the same race weekend either.
Now, Laguna Seca on the other side then moves to March. Who knows how long it's there, but it helps fill the gap conceivably between St. Pete and the rest of the schedule. So that helps fill that hole, but there will be a sizable hole next year in the middle of the season in the summer, but that'll be because of the Olympics. Nothing IndyCar's doing wrong.
Well, and this points back to Mark Miles, what he told Indy Star back at Mid-Ohio, as Brown points out, as far as, this is a way to increase the Nashville event and take it to the next level. He wasn't kidding. If they pull this off, having an actual racing circuit on Lower Broadway, season finale, victory, championship banquet in Nashville, perhaps at the Grand Ole Opry. I don't know if that's the location. I'm just guessing as a possibility. Like, this is how you reinvigorate that event and make it into a really big deal that makes, NASCAR jealous. makes F1 jealous. F1 doing those demo laps in Nashville.
Right.
Coming
I think
up.
it just helps IndyCar's profile because how many people are just going to look at that Formula One car and then think that's the same series that's coming to Broadway? Which is perfectly fine. I don't care.
Laguna Seca. So as far as that track, it moves up. So remember, they repaved. And Felix Rosenquist telling local media out there that lap times improved by 4 seconds over a year ago. So that's pretty remarkable.
Impressive. So if we look at what we think the schedule will look like next year, one event in Milwaukee, one event out, Grand Prix 2, the road course.
And then there's the wild card.
There is true. But then we look at this. So in and out, one in each, and then Laguna to March, Nashville to September.
And then potentially Gateway is a double header, so that adds a race.
A race. So you could maybe go to 18. But as we worked diligently last night to translate, there is a very interesting story that could be releasing this week.
Yes, on Friday. So we're recording here Thursday morning here in the U.S. But IndyCar in Argentina in 2024. So we talked about this before, but Juncos Hollinger Racing set to make a major announcement coming up this week. And there's already an announcement that I saw drop that Agustin Canapino is going to return to Turismo Carretera to jump in a car, which is their touring car series in Argentina, the end of the season there. But Junco says they have a press conference coming up Friday. Okay. So I don't know if this is connected because that's also with Turismo Carretera. So it's got to be with this. So the early report was leaked as far as Canapino returning, but could it be, or could that be a double bill where they're pairing with that series and IndyCar at Termas de Rio Hondo, which is the track that he tested at? So the Translate article, IndyCar would run in Argentina in 2024, expected to be finalized in the next few days. This came out, yesterday? So that would be, Wednesday. We're recording Thursday. But Termas de Rio Hondo would be the track in Santiago del Estero. MotoGP already visits that track annually. But IndyCar has a delegation that visited there. They talked all about it. Now, it would be an exhibition, right? Which is frustrating. But this is back on the board. And again, this is translated, but half the stuff would be shipped and the other half would be flown. Is that right?
Yes.
It would split as far as shipping and flown out. But this would be the end of the season. The final sentence. The chance is concrete. Just the signature remains. Reach? ? I mean, it's translated. So,
well, here's what's interesting to me. The most interesting thing for me, and this will be a 3-year contract. Now, it's contingent on the volatility of the Argentinian economy.
Yeah, which has very high inflation.
Yes, and they're about to have they're going to have an election in the next year or so, 2 years, with a new president, because the current president is not running for re-election. So that could change everything because there's a lot of state money going to be used for this. But this is what I found interesting. As for the date, Miles wanted it, talking about Mark Miles, wanted it to be in March, perhaps opening the IndyCar calendar. So maybe 2 weeks before St. Pete. But an impediment that was impossible to break, that's MotoGP's time.
Yeah.
And the promoter of the MotoGP event gets the keys to the facility about 2 weeks prior to that event. So that wasn't going to work. And then Argentina, since March wasn't going to work, then requested September or October. And that's where it's going to happen as a non-points paying race. But it sounds like there will be a sizable, quote unquote, sizable, whatever that is, monetary impact or monetary reward for the winner, or at least top first place, maybe third, but who knows? But there will be a significant income involved in winning that race to kind of incentivize teams to put their best efforts forward.
Which you have to do, right? If it's only going to be an exhibition race, you have to do that.
Correct. I just hope that it's not long-term, that it's a non-points paying race. First year's fine.
$8.5 million U.S. fee to bring the race.
Correct.
It's a significant investment, but you're looking at, this event will draw massive crowds. The track looks good from what we've seen from the tests they did last year with Canapino in an IndyCar. So all signs are positive there. I wish it wasn't an exhibition race, plain and simple.
I'm fine with it for 1 year, but if it's anything over than 1 year for an exhibition race, that's a problem.
Yes. Yeah, I guess I would agree. I give it a pass for 1 year, but it is frustrating that is kind of where this looks to be headed. So that's a look at the latest on the calendar for next year. We'll get to news and notes in a bit. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list. You'll never miss an episode or any special announcements we make. It is free to subscribe. You can also check out the store. We have t-shirts and stickers for sale there. If you want to support us, you can also support us patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and others for their support, starting at just $1 a month on Patreon. And you can also email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com, on social media, IndyCar Podcast on Twitter, or do we call it X now?
No, it's Twitter.
Also on Instagram, search for New Track Record on Facebook. And of course, you can always download us and listen on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, what have you, wherever you listen to podcasts, all for free. Mailbag time, and we start with Rate the Race. I will do one for each. I think for Saturday, I'll go a 6. For Sunday, I'll go a 6.5.
You know, I thought I would be the pessimist in going with that, but I'm going a 6.5 in both. I know people were entertained. It was good racing, but I just didn't rate it as high as other people.
When you have a dominant runaway winner, it's hard to give it a high rating.
There wasn't much in the way of chaos, which is a good thing, but it also hurt in terms of more yellows would have bred more drivers on lead lap, more entertaining restarts, stuff like that. We just didn't have that.
So I averaged out the ratings to make this easier for us. Race 1, 6.16 from our responses. Race 2, 5.75. I would have guessed the opposite, right? Yeah. I would have guessed the opposite. I was very surprised. So that was a look at Rate the Race for Iowa and what people had to say about it. Other notes to get to. This from Poet Shevchenko on the possibilities for races changing on the schedule. I have only positive takeaways from this article. Finishing the season in a vibrant, energetic venue, check. Moving the track to the heart of the action downtown, check. Using Laguna Seca to help plug the March gap, check. Starting the IndyCar season with all 3 track types, check. It's a great point.
Yes, it is a good point.
That's good stuff there from him. Elsewhere on Mailbag, as we got a lot we can dive into. So this from Chris in the 6. Wickens was with Arrow McLaren this past weekend at Toronto. Someone posted a picture of him with the team wearing the Arrow McLaren jacket. So that confirms our question from last week on the podcast.
Just puzzled why that ride that McLaren said would always be there is now no longer there.
Yes. This from R. Cole. Love the IndyCar talk as always. Responding to last week's episode post. Grateful to learn that my Peacock account is going up $1. Probably shouldn't ignore those emails. Yeah, I got the email, so I'm aware. It's unfortunate, but I guess to me, I don't look at it as a huge deal. No,
but I am counting that down the days to where I can get rid of Peacock, and that'll be at the end of the IndyCar season. True. I know there's college football and stuff. Peacock doesn't give me the value.
There's a couple exclusive college football games that I'm like, this is maybe worth keeping.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, but I think that's in September, so it won't matter.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the part that makes it a pass. Elsewhere, people complaining. I don't understand. People complaining about the suites and no one cares about the race. Who cares? I mean, you tweet, are they paying? Yes. A few responses. If Pocono were profitable for everyone involved, IndyCar would still be racing there. True.
Probably, but the crowd was on the uptick there and they left. I think the primary reason why they left has a lot to do with Robbie Wickens and Justin Wilson.
I think it had to do with, they had the second NASCAR day, and then once they lost that, they panicked, as people pointed out, and tried to get it back. Daniel SEM 2004, Hy-Vee is paying for everything. They won't be doing that much longer. Who knows, right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Pretty profitable for Hy-Vee.
Jeff Cerneski said, do the people complain about the concerts in Iowa complain about the snake pit? Yeah, as we said earlier, it's true. Point. It's reality, and it shouldn't matter. Someone else, Daniel SCM 2004, he was very defensive about all this. Pocono was profitable. The problem is Pocono didn't want IndyCar back after the negative press they got until they found out they were losing their NASCAR race weekend. Well, no, they were losing one of two because they still have NASCAR. They just have one race instead of two.
And they had a very successful weekend last weekend. There was a lot of people at that Pocono race.
It almost shows you, though, that leaving people wanting more, is that perhaps a key? Like NASCAR at Pocono. They struggled with 2 dates. Right. They go down to one, and as long as Mother Nature, which always seemed to play a role with their NASCAR race weekends, isn't a factor, it's
I wouldn't be surprised within 5 years that IndyCar finds its way back to Pocono.
I mean, you got to improve your East Coast footprint, right?
Correct.
It's an obvious problem. You can fix the gaps on the schedule.
I think it's a pretty solid track for the racing. And Pocono's still one of those few racetracks that's independent and has to find ways to be profitable. It's just not one line item for a series of tracks or NASCAR run tracks. So I could see IndyCar returning.
I posted this poll. Should race control have thrown a red flag following Ryan Hunter-Reay's late race contact in Sunday's Hy-Vee One Step 250? 63% of you said no. 37% said yes. I was actually surprised at this. Mike _Joachim _ saying the drivers meeting discuss what they would do in this scenario, which, it's true. I think, though, it's a fact where, why different rules for different races. Jeremy from HBG, very minor accident, so not a lot of cleanup required, plus reordering the field on a short track could take many laps. Vicky Lynn 26, no, there's no one stopped on track, nothing to clean up, no red flag needed. Kyle Conley 59, races can end under yellow. This new trend of everything must end under green is a trend I hate. They're doing that for entertainment, right? Kirk _ Fleener, in my humble opinion, if track can't be cleaned up with enough time, then finish should commence under yellow. Don't know that IndyCar needs to get into one-lap shootouts. Just be consistent throughout the season. And another
I think
note,
consistency is the big thing. I think consistency, whether you are doing it or not doing it, at least there be consistency. But
we don't know what they're going to do. I think that's the biggest problem. Other replies here. The red flag fest at Indy, this from run _ mark _ run, was a bit of a joke this year, hoping they learned something from that. Vin Designs 2013. I don't know if it's different, to be honest. And he was on a restart or it was a complete cluster bleep. So they had to go red to avoid confusion. Yesterday was fine. It went back to green. Should they have opened the pits? I don't know. Maybe slow the pace car down so quick yellows are simply quick. They have a pace car speed. I don't feel like you can change that.
Trickling around there.
Vaney said, I get the feeling the evolution of these calls is directly related to the reaction we see. People are up in arms about the red flags at the Indy 500s. Let's see what can be done that is less controversial. Let's tell them after we have to do it. Maybe. I don't know. They just went to the rule book. The abandonment of procedure was the rule. And that's what they did. Thompson 419 said, honestly, it looks fairly ridiculous to have two sets of rules for these situations. I guess that's my biggest issue. I agree there. Just be consistent and let us know.
Well, they're being consistent. They're consistently inconsistent.
Racer Boy 1969, abandonment of procedures, do what the bleep ever. Thought that was pretty funny. Chad _ 15, it should be the same set of rules from round 1 to 17. The rules are going to change like that, then Indy shouldn't be a points race at this point. And a lot of people agreeing with that. It is what it is. And I just hope we get consistency on that. Elsewhere, other notes on schedule speculation. As the road course out, Milwaukee in, Gateway doubleheader. People's thoughts. Big D Kart, there will be fewer fans at Milwaukee than at Indy GP2. Maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. The first time around, everybody was clamoring
who says
for Milwaukee.
They want Milwaukee buys a ticket, I disagree.
Well, but that was the first time around when Andretti brought it back as Indy Fest or whatever. Mm-hmm. If everybody went to Indy Fest that said they were going to go back to Milwaukee, then the race would still be on the schedule.
Poet Shevchenko, I love it. Gateway works better in the cool of night. I think the fans up in the grandstands probably appreciate that too. Going night race, day race. Bill Hessa, Gateway, 2 thumbs up. Although my wife watched Sunday's race and immediately asked why our home race doesn't book comparable acts, she could care less about the racing. Concerts are a selling point.
As long as she's going, she buying a ticket, cool.
Kyle Conley, 59, Milwaukee, yes. Gateway doubleheader, no. Gateway is easily the worst oval on the year and in worst race of the year contention. I don't know about that.
Haven't heard that take before.
I haven't either.
But hey, to each his own.
Racing is my life, said yes, more ovals. Hickey93 said, love it. And Jim Cerro said, I love the miles coming back. I also think expectations on the concerts need to be set. A big difference in what Iowa does and what Nashville or Detroit do. The mile doing what those two do will get it bulldozed. Iowa works because the concert schedule is top tier. Yeah.
That's the problem is not everybody can bring in Carrie Underwood and Ed Sheeran and Kenny Chesney. I mean, that's not working.
You're getting 4 at worst for any of those. It's like a B-list act. But,
they're all
I'd
A-list,
say they're all
man.
A-listers.
They're all
personally.
A-list, yes.
So that's really big, and we'll see what happens. Let's see if we have any other mailbag-related notes. Yeah, I mean, people talking about the Nashville race moving. Vicky Lane 26, as long as the new layout will allow better actual racing, not so much crashing. Don't like the idea of a championship being decided by attrition.
I do.
I mean, it's survival, right?
I would rather have that than
Laguna
a parade.
Seca.
Yes. Than a parade around Laguna Seca.
Poet Shevchenko said, all this IndyCar-related positivity recently is quite disconcerting.
Something's going to happen, right?
And Hickey93 said, where's the other shoe? Yeah, for real. Mm-hmm. Where is the other shoe?
It will drop at some point.
It feels like we're so close to that. All right, that wraps up the mailbag for this week. News and notes. And time to get to a few other things. Juncos Hollinger Racing. So we talked a lot about them. Pay.com is their new primary sponsor. So they debuted multi-year deal for them. Ricardo Junco says expect other sponsorship announcements in the coming weeks for the team. So congrats to them. That's really big for them. And to getting a primary sponsor on not one, but both cars, huge.
Gives them a significant cushion in terms of investment and what they can do. That's huge for Juncos Hollinger as they continue to grow. That was a big thing. We've seen empty side pods, or at least Juncos Hollinger on the side of the side pods this week or this year. The fact that that's going away for next year is encouraging. And we had heard last week at this time about what they needed to happen to ensure Agustin Canapino coming back next year. I think this seals it for sure.
I would agree. I thought the same thing when they announced this. A couple of notes in Indy Lights, some driver lineup changes. Able Motorsports making some moves, and I'm going to apologize in advance for butchering this name, but Yuvan Sundaramurthy will drive the number 57 Able Motorsports car at Nashville, Portland, and Laguna Seca. Then also they announced another driver, and let's see, it looks like I apparently deleted out of that one, but the other driver will be a part of the team. Francesco Pizzi will drive at those 3 races. He'll drive Nashville, IMS, and Laguna Seca.
Now, I know those are added entries because Able Motorsports has only just been a single car entry this year with Jacob Abel. Yeah, so Able Motorsports may be eyeing some expansion for next season and giving some guys some shots from the ladder too, which is pretty cool.
So that's a positive there. Elsewhere on news and notes items, not a whole lot to get to just because we got to pretty much everything. In fact, that is it. So tweets of the week time. First off, before that, Steve Wittich had a mild heart attack late last week. So wish him best of luck in his recovery. And then tweets of the week, Tony DeZeno, most miserable podium interviews ever. This was after Saturday's race. Newgarden was like mad to win. He was so upset with lap cars. I didn't understand. Weird. And then IMS Museum tweeted, the museum wants to know, what's your all-time favorite pass at Indy? It's a picture of Mears and Michael Andretti. And Marco Andretti tweeted, I know my least favorite, with a crying laughing emoji and a face palm. I thought that was
hysterical.
Awesome. Which Marco back in action with SRX along with Josef Newgarden tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
As they continue their series.
Is Elio too?
Elio and I think TK as well.
Cool. All right, random split error drive of the week time. We're going the fertile ground of the mid 2000s. That is the Champ Car World Series 2005, going with Homero Richards.
Who?
A Mexican race car driver from Mexico City. I will give you one guess on which race he competed in 2005. He's from Mexico City.
Mexico City.
He raced in the Mexico City street course race in 2005. He finished 16th in that event. He was one and done, drove for CTE HVM Racing that season in just one race. He had won the Pan Am GP Series in 2004 and 2005, which was the Latin America Formula Renault Championship. And he was one and done in Champ Car. That one start in 2005 at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
Isn't that fun to say, by the way?
It absolutely is. Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. We'll say it again and again here. He actually switched the year after to stock cars, drove in the NASCAR Corona Series, and was heavy in Nextel in that series over the course of 7 or 8 years. Also raced in the Escuderia Grupo TOP in the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, in which you have the video game too for the NASCAR Peak Mexico series. But Homero Richards get that spot start at, one more time, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez race course in 2005. That was it for his Champ Car career. This week's random split era driver of the week, Mr. Homero Richards.
Once again, a driver I've never heard of. No surprise.
Oh, CART is a who's who of no names.
Especially once you get after like 2002 or 2003.
Yes.
When it's the Champ Car era.
Yes. IRL makes it difficult when you get into that era because even the no names but nobody knows these guys in CART.
Correct.
In Champ Car, rather.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm sure there will be some more news and rumors to drop. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. This has been New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.